And so I go to the article. My comment's not there.
Yeah, if we're talking about Me Too, we wouldn't want the woman who was actually physically raped in there. I don't think you were going to make the cut. Glad to have our next guest on the program. This is actually, she's a return guest. We've had her on before a long time ago, actually, I believe during the 2016 campaign. You can go get her book now, wherever books are sold. You'd better put some ice on that. The author, and her website, of course, now I ruined the prestige, but it's JuanitaBroaddrick.com. Miss Broaddrick, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. It's so good to be back with you.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, and especially at this time right now, where your story is as relevant as ever. And I know it's a tough story to tell, and you write about this in your book. For those who maybe aren't super familiar, some new viewers, can you kind of explain to them how you came to the public spotlight with the Clinton issue? I don't want to speak for you because, I have a man and hashtag men don't know anything.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, back in 1978, I volunteered for Bill Clinton's gubernatorial campaign. I was a nursing home owner. I was a registered nurse, but someone asked me to volunteer, so I thought, well, this would be good. I've never been involved in politics. And I did this for approximately a month when I had a call from the Little Rock campaign office and said Bill Clinton was going to be in the area and could he come by and visit at my nursing home. I was so excited. I mean, the whole staff, the families, the residents, we were all excited.
Right.
And then that picture that's on the front of my book was from the local newspaper. And after the photo op, Bill Clinton comes over to me and starts talking, and he's so charismatic, and he never loses eye contact with you when he's talking to you.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
it's actually a skill, though. He's able to make it seem like he's making eye contact while simultaneously staring at your breasts. That's a skill of his, but yes.
I was so shy back then, I wouldn't know.
Well, okay, so apologies, but continue, with the timeline here.
Okay, well, so I thought, what a perfect opportunity. Nursing homes in Arkansas were struggling. The per diem rate was so low, and we couldn't adequately care for our residents. So I just offered this information to him. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you ever in Little Rock?" And I said, "Yes, I'll be there in 3 weeks." And he said, "Well, why don't you call my office and let's get together and talk about this?" I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. And I worked for 2 or 3 days on getting graphs and everything and what the cost was and what we were being reimbursed. So then the day comes, April the 24th, 1978. My nurse and I drive down to Little Rock. The next morning we get up and we call Bill Clinton's office. And the young lady answers and tells me that he's not there, but gives me a number to call. I call the number, he answers the phone. I tell him that we have an hour for our lunch break. Could I please come over and meet him in his office at noon and bring the information? And of course his long drawl is saying, "Well, I'm not going to be there today. Why don't I just come to your hotel now?" This was 8 o'clock in the morning.
So his office became your hotel very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's pretty smooth operation there. I've never heard of well, actually, that's not true. I have heard of offices being in hotel rooms, but that's notably, when Kevin Spacey's producing a new picture. Continue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he got to the hotel. I told Norma, I said, "You go on to the meeting, and I'll be there shortly after I leave the coffee shop." We plan to meet in the coffee shop downstairs. When he gets to the hotel, he calls my room, and he says, "There's so many people down here, and there's reporters." He said, "Can we just talk about this and have coffee in your room?" I didn't really think anything about it. I know I must have been leery because I'd never been alone in a hotel room with a man I didn't know. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And so, but he was the Attorney General. So I said, "Sure," and I ordered coffee to the room. And he comes up, and the first thing when I opened the door, there he stands in the hallway, just him, but I didn't look out. I don't know who else was with him, with sunglasses on. We're talking a dim lit hallway with sunglasses. That should have been a tip off, but like I said.
You could have thought it was a style thing. People were wearing sunglasses back then. It's just you thought it was a sunglasses thing. I get it.
Yeah, just absolutely pathetic. So he comes in, and we all know the story that he finally he asked me to come over to his side of the table where I was pouring the coffee, and he pointed to a little building that was down on the Arkansas River. You could see it from my window. And he said, "Come here, I want to show you this." I should never have walked around that table. But anyway, things really went south. I mean, it was horrible.
Right.
I began to scream when he grabbed me and tried to kiss me, and when he forced me on the bed and started tearing at my clothes, I began to scream again. Well, this time, whenever I did, he would bite my upper lip. And it was, I'll just never forget how painful that was.
Yeah.
And then after the rape, I was devastated. I sat up on the side of the bed and I was crying. And he gets up and he's straightening himself, and he just sort of looks at me real bewildered, and he says, "Don't worry, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a child." That blew me away. I thought, my God, man, you just raped me, and that's what you have to say? And then he just looked at me again, put on his sunglasses, calmly walked to the door, and motioned to my mouth, which was swollen 3 times the normal size. All of this just turned inside out and bleeding. And he says, "You better put some ice on that," and walks out the door.
And that's the title of your book, where people can check it out at JuanitaBroaddrick.com. I want to make sure one thing here, because obviously the reason we're having you on is because of right now the hashtag #MeToo movement, and we see what's been going on with Kavanaugh. Here's the thing. I know that people will say these are allegations. We have to address that. But I do think there's a big difference in, I think no one would deny this, the treatment of your allegations from the media. Before we get to the details that you've had, which have not been actually corroborated from stories 30 years ago, the treatment of you coming forward against Bill Clinton versus every single woman who comes forward today with Kavanaugh. Have you seen that contrast, and has it been startling to you?
The first thing when Christine Ford came out, I thought, where is this woman's proof? And then everything started crumbling, and then they bring in another one, Ms. Ramirez. And I think, my God, woman, you have absolutely no proof. I had the woman that found me, plus I had 5 more people that I told within the next week. Right. Women talk. We tell each other things.
Right.
I cannot believe that if this happened, she would not have told someone.
Well, let me ask you this. When did this event happen with Bill Clinton and yourself?
April the 25th, 1978 at 8:30 in the morning.
And where did it occur?
It hurt. Well, at that time, the hotel was called the Camelot. I don't know what it's called right now.
Now, pivotal for people listening, those are more details than have come forward in any accusation against Kavanaugh. And we'll get to more. But it's important that people note, it's not even close. When people say you're just going tit for tat, no, we're not playing the same game here. Details, where, when, with specificity, and I appreciate that, Ms. Broaddrick, they've provided none. But I remember what really, really bothered me the first time you were on the show, and I think we talked about it, was when I looked into it a little bit more, you actually agreed to do an interview, if I'm not mistaken, with someone at NBC. Was it Lisa Myers, somewhere in the late 90s. And this was, I think, was it the day after Bill Clinton was impeached?
It was just a few days. Now, I had been talking with Lisa Myers for over a year, her trying to get me to come forward, and I refused completely.
Yes, and she sat on the story for over a month.
Yeah, no, she didn't. NBC
did, yes.
She begged them to do this, and she said, she called me one day, because they filmed on January the 20th, 1999, and it didn't get on the TV. I mean, it wasn't aired until, I think, February 26th, somewhere around that.
Right.
But she called me one day because I was upset. This was supposed to be aired during the impeachment. That's the only reason I went on, is I thought, this can stop this man. And they wait till after the impeachment. But before that, I remember her calling me one day, and I said, I don't want to hear from NBC anymore. And she said, well, listen, I've got good news and bad news. She said, the good news is you're credible, and the bad news is you're very credible. Now, what do I do with that? I'd never been interviewed before. I didn't understand all the specifics of what that statement meant.
Right.
But I do now.
Yeah, I understand it now very well. Also, and I think it's important too to note that the response from Clinton, Bill Clinton, when he's asked about the issue, he says, "Well, you know what? Counsel my lawyer has a statement," and he never flat out denies it, as opposed to again Kavanaugh saying these allegations are completely false. Hey, listen, public hearing, as much information and transparency as possible to clear my name. Because as a woman who's been a victim of rape, and I don't want to go through details and have you relive it, or if ever this goes any direction you're uncomfortable, please let us know. But I do think it's an important story, and I am interested as to your opinion on, what when you have the scales, what tips the scales in the balance of, proof versus right now, believe all survivors, really believe all claims. How do you view what's happening now in the court of public opinion?
Oh, it's going to be a different situation regarding who the person is and what their memory is. If they're inebriated, they're not going to remember anything.
Right.
Where I was completely awake, having coffee, about to go to a seminar meeting, completely full dressed, ready. And I think she had on a swimsuit. I was suspicious from the beginning before it started to crumble. There has to have been someone she would have told if it was that horrific.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I would imagine. I want to be clear. With your story, you told several people, and I think, was it Norma, not Norma Jean, that's a band I listened to. Was it Norma Rogers?
Norma Rogers, her name's Kelsey now. She was my director of nursing. And thank God I was there with her. She's the one that found me within 30 minutes, went and got ice from my mouth and packed up all of our stuff. She said when she came in the door and after she'd gone to get the ice, and we were sitting there while I was crying, and she was just about crying too, while I told her what happened, she said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Oh, please just take me home."
And people will ask, why didn't you press charges then, at that time?
Bill Clinton, they say, "Why didn't you call the police?" There was no DNA back then. There was nothing like that. And Bill Clinton was the police. He was the Attorney General of my state. He regulated my businesses. He could have closed me down on a whim.
Right. Yeah. I think that's important to note, as opposed to, again, we're talking about Kavanaugh, who isn't there yet. You know what I mean? He hasn't been appointed yet. But it is kind of crazy to me. This is a guy who still has reached high levels of government, that none of this had ever come out. Obviously, just from an outsider perspective, you're going, only 30-something years later, 35 years later, and very different. Again, you just mentioned Norma Rogers. There were many people in your story with this incident who corroborated your story. I don't want to say your story because I don't want to make it sound fictional. I don't want to misspeak there at all. Whereas in the case of Kavanaugh, after Ford came forward, all of the friends declined to confirm the story, even when she was reaching out to build a case. It's a very, very different sequence of events, which is why it makes it so much more chilling to me that, if people want to cover the story, if the media is interested in a story, if we're talking about really helping victims, survivors of sexual assault, why you weren't given more opportunities to share your story. It's night and day.
I'm flying to Washington, D.C. in the morning. I'm going out there with Amy Kramer and the Women for Trump because we want to stand with Brett Kavanaugh. We don't want these crazy pink hat wearing ladies try to define what we women really are here in 2018. So we're going to be a part of that. And I'm just so happy that they asked me to go.
And something else, too, that you bring up as you bring up Kavanaugh and some women now, you and your friends supporting him, there's no pattern of behavior here. I think something that's very important is you weren't the first woman to come forward with Bill Clinton, and you weren't the last. So it makes it even more, with Kavanaugh, there's no proof of this at all in any instance. Not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying there's zero chance. But again, as a pattern of behavior, as a pattern of character, we don't see it. Come on. It's former President Bill Clinton. It's his calling card. It might actually be on his physical calling card, for all I know. So again, it would seem the credibility, as you said it. So were you always acknowledged as credible behind the scenes? Was that always the case, or was it later on as the evidence mounted and then they said, let's just keep this quiet?
Yeah, it was, I had no idea of his reputation, absolutely none, until the years progressed and I would hear about these things. And when I was subpoenaed by Ken Starr. That was the first time I told the truth. The main reason that he subpoenaed me is because I'd lied in the Paula Jones suit. I saw what had happened to the other women, and I'll be darned if I was going to come forward and be persecuted like that. But he wanted to know, was I lying because they had threatened me or paid me off? No, none of that happened. I could not add to his obstruction of justice at all. So, but they never discredited me. I get so upset when
the reason that you lied at that point wasn't because of any kind of bribery. It was just to protect your reputation and because you thought nothing good could come of it because they were Teflon.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Look what they had already done to Jennifer Flowers and Paula Jones. Look what was happening, and to these other women that were coming forward then. I owned nursing homes. I was a businesswoman. I wanted this all to go away.
Right.
And then after I testified, after I was deposed by Paula Jones, I was angry that someone could try to pull me into their lawsuit for their own personal gain. I know Paula now. She's a fine young lady. But I was angry, and I thought, you're not going to do this to me. But the reason they pulled me into it is because two of her investigators showed up on my front porch one day and recorded me saying, I'm not going to talk about the most horrible event of my life.
Right.
So take that recording back to Paula Jones' attorneys, and so naturally I'm named Jane Doe number 5 in that suit. And I was angry that they pulled me into that.
I think that's also important to note, sort of this idea of the unwilling hero. You had a lot to lose, right, at this point. Like you said, a businesswoman, this was something that you were not interested in taking part. Whereas when we talk about Ford Kavanaugh, she stands a lot to gain, as we see right now. And that's a contrast, I think, looking into the evidence, the specifics, the corroborations from people who were there. We don't have that in any of these other stories. The pattern of behavior on the would-be assailant, as well as the motives behind the person coming forward. Yours, the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because I would say that in nearly every case, yours is the inverse of Christine Ford, or whichever crime. I don't even know what we're up to now. Someone said he showed his donager at a party is another thing. I don't know why we throw that into the same pile as what you experienced in actual rape.
Oh, and people say to me, how on earth can you not sympathize with Dr. Ford? This, of course, this is on Twitter when people go after me. And I say, Dr. Ford's allegations aren't 1% of what I went through. You cannot compare this in any way. It makes me angry that they can even say these two things are comparable.
Right. It is odd to me, and I've talked about this obviously as an ignorant male, but it seems to be, rapists are twisted people, right? They're twisted. They're aroused by rape. So it seems to me that either a rapist, if you're alone in a room and the rapist, he either rapes you unless you have a gun as a woman. They don't stop mid-rape and, all right, get out of here, you little rascal. So the only story that I think was generated from Ford was, he got so drunk that he passed out and I got away. That's something to me that was very, and I would like your insight on that as someone who went through this ordeal. It seems very unlikely that someone who lives for rape, and this is what rapists love, they get a thrill out of it, would pass out because he's sleepy.
Oh, I know. That's just beyond me. There's no way I could have gotten away from Bill Clinton. He's a very large man.
Yeah.
And at that time I weighed maybe 110 pounds. And, even when I say that right now, Stephen, I get chills thinking about how he held me down and what he did to me. It's...
And like I said, I don't want to get into specifics. I don't want this to become a Barbara Walters, salacious interview where I'm just trying to make you, whatever you're comfortable with. He was a large man back then. It was before he was vegan. He was still eating the fast food cheeseburgers. So he probably had a few extra pounds.
Yeah. It was harrowing.
Yeah.
And, in the beginning, I blamed myself because that's how it was back in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
You let a man come to your room, it's your fault. And I still had that mentality that it was my fault for allowing him to come to the room. And this finally went away, but it really went away in 1991 when this I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
When this monster apologized to me. I was down in Little Rock again with my nurse that had found me that day and her sister, both of them RNs, and someone comes to the door and they say, Ms. Broaddrick is wanted in the hall. So I'm thinking it's an emergency from home. I get up, go out, and shortly after they follow me. And the man points down around the corner to the elevator. And so I walk down there and look around and go around the corner. And as I do, there stands Bill Clinton. And he's got his 2 Arkansas State policemen standing back behind him. And he comes over to me and he says, "I'm so sorry for what I did." He said, "I'm a family man. I'm a changed man. I'm just not that person anymore." And you got to realize it's been 13 years since I'd laid eyes on him.
Right.
I just sort of backed up, and I started crying, and I thought, "You jerk," to myself. And then I said, "You go to hell." And I turned and walked to my friends. And they said, "What did he want?" And I said, "He apologized." 2 weeks before he announced he was running for president. But what frightens me the most about that is that he could reach out and touch me at that time in my life and know where I was.
Right. So even if it were meant to be a sincere apology, still be wildly uncomfortable to the victim of sexual assault, considering that this is the assaulter. It's something I won't even think about. Yeah, reaching into your personal space and 2 police officers behind him. So if you swatted him off of you, you know you'd be in cuffs and you'd be in the drunk tank for the evening. Yeah, that's that really is disconcerting. Well, considering that you've been through this, and you've really written about it in detail. So I encourage people to go to your website and check out your book. Again, very, very different from what we're seeing today. What's been your take on this whole hashtag Me Too movement? It started with Weinstein and Cosby, which I think everyone was on board with. And I don't know if you followed sort of the Norm Macdonald ordeal, where they said producers at the Tonight Show were weeping. His comments were, it started off as 100 women can't, or 1,000 women can't be lying. Then no women can be lying. And then we have to believe all women all the time, which to me seems very reasonable. That's kind of my sentiment on this movement. But I'm curious as to where you line up and how you've seen it evolve.
Oh, I don't think that the Me Too wants anything to do with conservative women. And they especially want nothing to do with the victims of Bill Clinton. Back before the ladies were named Time Person of the Year, I got a call from Charlotte Alter, Jonathan Alter's daughter, who works for Time. Mm-hmm. And she asked me to submit a comment. She said, "We'd really like for you to give a comment in support of Me Too." And I said, "I'd be happy to." I said, even though at that moment, I knew that it must be doing some good for someone. And even though they never recognized me, I wanted to give a comment in support.
Sure.
I did. So then all of a sudden, it was a shock to find out they were Person of the Year. And so I go to the article, my comment's not there. And I call her and I say, "Why did you want my comment if you were going to put it in?" And her comment back to me was, "Well, Juanita, the writers have control over that, and I guess they just had too many others to include." Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking about Me Too, we wouldn't want the woman who was actually physically raped in there. Let's have two white chick. What's the name of that show? Two urban.
Two drunk chicks?
Two drunk chicks. I don't know the name of that sitcom. Yeah, it's just so it's like no. Let's get Juanita Broaddrick. Yeah, we'll make some time. Let's get Mindy Kaling in here. What do you think about this? Isn't Chris Hardwick a dick? It's just surprised. I mean, I understand they have editorial control, and we have to make edits sometimes for this show. We don't have to make nearly as many edits as typical kind of corporate network media or Time Magazine. But that is very striking to me. Do you remember who was included with the quotes at all?
Oh, no, I just went through sort of hurriedly and looked at mine, then looked for mine. And when she said that to me, I was so hurt, and I never even looked at it again.
Do you remember what your comment was, or to what effect it might have been?
I thought they were doing good, but I thought there were some areas where they could possibly reach a broader political area, and that's probably what did it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly what did it. This is a very balanced approach, a balanced comment from an actual survivor of rape. I don't think you were going to make the cut. You weren't getting a screen test, Juanita.
But that's when I didn't know any more than I did about Me Too. I was happy that the organization was doing this, but then as months and months go by, they do not recognize us, never reach out to us.
Yeah.
We've tried to give support for them. That's wrong.
Well, I do have a question for you on this, because as you discussed, back in the 60s, there was some victim blaming going on where, well, you made some bad decisions, therefore you deserve this. But then that was conflated with slut shaming, with not believing any and all claims. And then that led to campus tribunals and Mattress Girl and UVA and just he raped me, and it turned out to be completely false. And they've ruined the reputation of young men forever. As a survivor of rape, and people throw this term around so flippantly, survivor of sexual assault. Now, it's not even survivor of rape, it's survivor of sexual assault. Someone shows a plastic pecker at a party, and all of a sudden you're a survivor, like you have a barcode on your arm from Auschwitz. It's really belittling to actual survivors from painful ordeals. But have you seen the pendulum swing, would you say, too far the other way? Because we certainly don't want to victim blame, but we certainly don't want to just allow allegations of rape to go out against anybody, especially in this information age, with zero accountability at all.
I think it's horrible what they're doing to men who are not guilty. A lady put a tweet on, and I retweeted it this morning, and she said, Schumer's put out all these numbers to call if you've been sexually abused. And she said, what number do I call if my only son is falsely accused of sexual misconduct?
I don't know if is there a hotline for that?
No, that was tongue in cheek.
No, I don't know. I thought she could be looking for one, and I wanted to help her, but I assumed there wasn't.
No, but I mean, that's what she's saying. Look what's done to the men that are falsely accused.
Yeah. I think it's important to note, by the way, that there are still plenty of men now who do get blacklisted, and rightfully so. There's still, when you look at Weinstein, when you look at Spacey, when you look at Cosby, there still is a process, and a lot of these people get convicted, or a lot of these people have some serious settlements out of court, or even look at O'Reilly and was it 13 million with 6 different women. I mean, these aren't exactly. I mean, there are people on the right and on the left. This isn't something that goes completely unaccounted for. But what would you say? What should the burden of proof be then in these instances? What do you if a woman comes forward and says, okay, I was raped by this guy. Let's say it's a campus rape, like Mattress Girl, which turned out to be false, or let's say it's Kavanaugh. What burden of proof do you think would be fair to be required? What
Christine Ford does not have. I can't imagine. Of course, now day and time you have DNA, and that's a huge thing. If they would go and have a rape kit done, and tell somebody, Lord, if they don't want to go to the police, if they're afraid to go to the police, just tell somebody you can trust.
As soon as possible on the record, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah, because it is one thing to have, as you said, there are several friends, and Norma Rogers is one of them, but people can do their own research for themselves. And it's another thing to not know the location, time, what happened, and whether you were raped or not. And the other story, isn't the other story with Kavanaugh that he might have revealed his wiener, or it might have been a fake wiener?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big difference.
I know. It's also ridiculous. They thought this was just going to pass right through, and they were going to get rid of Brett Kavanaugh. They didn't realize what a strong man that he is, and what a strong family, and what a strong support he has.
Yes, and just for the record, I'm pretty sure we have fake wieners in our prop closet somewhere around that we've had to use. So we have women who work for us. Please, let's not get Gloria Allred on the phone. All right, so listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, and I know you'll probably be talking with some other people. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? I know that You'd Better Put Some Ice on That is the book, JuanitaBroaddrick.com. But any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I told you I'm going to Washington, so we can stand with Brett Kavanaugh. And I would love to be able to ask Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer why they turned their backs on me in 1999 and refused to read my deposition with Ken Starr. Not one Democrat read it.
Well, I'll tell you what, people out there who are watching this, do Feinstein and Schumer have Twitter still? We'll figure it out. They either have a Twitter or an Instagram, if not a phone number, but we'll have people in our audience. Please do go forward and ask them that question, because I think it's an important question considering how quickly they've jumped on these other bandwagons. JuanitaBroaddrick.com. You'd Better Put Some Ice on That is the name of the book. Thank you so much for taking the time and discussing what is no doubt, I know, a painful experience, but hey, helping more people from it. Thank you. Hey there, YouTube viewer. If you like this video, I'd say subscribe, but that may not mean anything. I'd say hit the notification bell, but who knows when you're watching this. That may not mean anything. These videos playing may not even be there anymore. I don't know. What year is it that you're seeing this? It's the internet. It lives forever. But something that will never die, you can join Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. Not only do you get the clips, but you get the full late-night 45-minute show every single day. $99 for students, $69 for students, veteran, or active military. It's the only way to keep us going because we cannot subsist off of YouTube alone. As you see, they're clamping down on us. But listen, pedophiles interested in twinks, I don't know, they're fine. They're fine. They will always have a home here, but we may not. Mug Club, join it. Help us. Help us fight pedophiles.